Ladies and gentlemen, it is my immense pleasure to introduce our panel for this afternoon. It is, in fact, it's really a distinguished group of people, and all of them with deep experience in the tourism industry, tourism and hospitality industry, but at the same time, people that have really made change in a significant way. I'll introduce our panel first and call them to the stage, and then our moderator. So if we could start with Lokan. He's the principal investment at Kasada Capital Management. Thank you very much. If you could just take a seat there. Ram is also, his firm is also the owners of this building. So thank you very much for having us. Peter-Hain Kayapua. Peter is the founding CEO of Uakii Wilderness Safaris. Thank you very much, Peter. And then really, I can only say that she's an institution. She's been perhaps longer in the industry than many of us is old in this room. Gitta Paetzold, she's the CEO of the Hospitality Association of Namibia. Sorry. And Mbidzo, he's the acting CEO of the Namibia Tourism Board. Thank you very much, Boni, for joining us. And then please allow me a great pleasure, actually. Our guest for today is, or rather our moderator for today, is the CBS News travel editor, and he reports regularly on a broad range of travel-related news for CBS Mornings, CBS Sunday Morning, and of course CBS News, Evening News. He's a multiple Emmy Award-winning investigative reporter and producer, and is the consummate insider when it comes to reporting travel news or travel business as news. Also, Travel Weekly named him as one of the most influential people in the hospitality industry, along with Bill Marriott and Richard Branson. And this year, he will be inducted into the US Travel Association's Hall of Leaders. He is the chief contributing editor at Michelin Travel, and also the co-author of Michelin's new Like a Local guides, and is currently serving as the editor-at-large of Global News Travel magazine. He's also a New York Times bestseller, writing the Travel Detective series, and of course the Best Places of Everything, revealing the places to find life-changing experiences, obviously like Namibia. And also a number of other titles, which short presentation. But I think, aside from being really a sought-after expert speaker and moderator, he is also a volunteer fireman at the NYPD in New York. And he is the keynote speaker and at many annual summits, amongst other the World Travel and Tourism Council and the Global Business Travel Association and Virtuoso. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to welcome Peter Greenberg. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Francois. Good afternoon, everybody. That was weak. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. Okay. And welcome to our panel. Before we get to the panel, for your, Nangula, your presentation, you made me think. And you made me think about your stable government, your economy, your wide open spaces, and your nomad visa. And considering the dysfunction that's going on in the United States of America right now, I just want to let you know I've decided to stay. Watch. But let's talk about Namibia in terms of powering investment in hospitality. And our panel knows a lot about that. We're going to try to cover as many topics as we can today. And then, of course, we'll open it up to questions from the audience. And when we start with the basics of the economy, I'll get a microphone here. Here we go. And I'll sit down next to you guys. There we go. When we start talking about a stable government, a healthy economy, you know, in the 54 countries in Africa, you're doing quite well. Those are the ingredients that starts it off. But in the post-pandemic world, where everybody's now competitive, and demand is taking away from what Nangula was talking about, the seasonality of travel, it's now, I think, a 12-month season. And not just in Namibia, but around the world. How do you be competitive in terms of attracting investment? What can you, and I throw this open, I'll start with you, Bonnie. How do you attract investment from a government perspective in terms of incentives, in terms of taxes, in terms of reasonable financing? And Ram, I'll get to you right after that as well. How do you do that?
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Meme Nangola. Peter, to answer your question, we need to understand that before you become an investor or to decide to invest in a particular destination, you should have been a tourist. You must have gone there for you to fall in love with the destination. So for those who would want to invest in Namibia, firstly, they need to come and see the country. Only then will they start thinking, okay, I'm going to invest in Namibia, not in South Africa. But now, why? The first thing is you need to be assured that you will be safe, which Meme Nangola spoke very well, that we are a safe destination. Because no one would want to go and invest, for argument's sake, in DRC with what is happening. There's war. So for Namibia to stand out, we need to have these ingredients. But what is the incentive for you then to come and invest into Namibia? Number one is to make sure that whenever you invest, you are able to repatriate your profits. That is crucial. And the second one is we do not have a foreign tax regime where foreigners are going to have a different tax regime as compared to the Namibians.
You're talking like withholding taxes.
Yes. And the last one, of course, around 1992-93, the tourism sector in Namibia was opened up through the GATS. So already we were sending out a message that we are open for investment within the tourism sector. And I think we are the only one in Africa which is 100% open under the trading services. So that is already on its own an investment incentive that you can invest anywhere in any other subsector in Namibia.
And Ram, of course, that leads me right to you. In terms of investment, is it as attractive as Bonnie says?
Well, I did follow Bonnie's advice before I even heard it today. I was a tourist here. I came on my honeymoon before investing in the country. So one definitely leads to the other. But definitely, we are. Thank you for having us here. We are honored to be the host sponsor for AIF this year, and hosting this wonderful conference in this wonderful place. We, as Kasada, we are the owners of the Movenpick and Mercure Conference Center, Conference Complex. Thrilled to be able to host all of you here and showcase our little part of Windhoek in this grand open expanse that is Namibia. And as investors as real estate investors, as private investors on the continent, I echo a lot of what Bonnie said. Number one, we look at is the macro situation, even before we start getting into all of the statistics that were shared by the CEO just now. Is the country open for business, which means what is its regulation, its transparency, its macro context, its economic context, and so on and so forth. And of course, let's not pretend otherwise. Namibia doesn't often come in the picture. Why? Because you have South Africa, which is kind of dominates in terms of its brand presence, shall we say. Once you get past that and you realize the opportunities that exist here in this country, then you are remiss not to really want to invest here. There's lots of potential, lots of opportunities because of the transparency, the growth potential, and one statistic I'll add that was I'm glad I found one statistic that was not in your presentation is the percentage the government spends on education, which is almost 25-26%, which is one of the highest in Africa. And what does it lead to? It leads to high literacy rates. 91% literacy rates, which again is I think number 3 in Africa. And what does it do for the tourism sector? It means that you have a workforce that is well educated and complements all of the other things we talk about in terms of attractiveness for an investment destination. So we've been investors here since 2021, and we've seen good rewards for being here, and hopefully it continues to grow.
one of the things you just brought up, in that it usually holds back investment and it holds back development, is staffing and training. And Gitta, you can talk about that, because this is not a Namibia problem, it's a global problem. We saw it, of course, firsthand in a very fast way immediately following the pandemic, where the whole nature of the travel industry in terms of staffing completely changed. And it went from, and by the way, this happened tremendously in the United States in a very bad way, because is hospitality a job or is it a profession? And when you have that literacy rate and you have that ability to train, you can actually make it a profession as opposed to a job.
Yeah, and that was one of the challenges that we actually sat in this very venue just about a year ago. The Hunt Congress last year was all about co-creation of a tourism training roadmap, because exactly to the point that you mentioned just now, the global crisis after the global crisis was skills deficiency in tourism. And we had a German hotel group, for instance, call us up and say, oh, we believe in Africa, you've got a lot of unemployed youth people, send them to Europe, we need them here, we need working hands to actually help us, recover from the pandemic and kickstart the tourism and hospitality industry in Europe. And we said, not so fast, because we've got a thriving and growing tourism market ourselves. We want to have our own people service our people. And to me, it's good and well, and I'm very proud to be able to say and state and listen to the talks about the stable economy that Namibia has and the stable political environment. But to me, the biggest asset that Namibia has, apart from the beautiful landscape, is our people. And I think that's where we need to focus our investment sort of targets as well, because the people actually make for tourism. I'm very much, and I know I'm being smiled at by many people where they say, Gitta, you need to get with it. You technology-wise so far behind. And I feel there's one element in tourism that cannot be replaced by AI, and I think that's where we need to focus as well. So definitely training and skills development is key.
Please do not get me started on AI. Please don't do that. I'm an avatar. No. But speaking of training, I had a personal experience with my wife here just 2 nights ago here at the hotel, at the Movenpick at the restaurant. You were training a new team there. The chef was there training them. Unbelievable. We never were treated better. The service, the hospitality, the warmth, the genuineness, and that doesn't come from training. That comes from the people. And when you have that as the base, you can't go wrong. I just wanted to say that. But when we talk about profession versus job, that's still a big problem. And it's still a big problem, because if we went today to a cafe in Italy and we just want to go get a coffee, right? There's a reasonably good chance, in fact, there's probably an overwhelming chance, that waiter who was serving us, that's not his job, that's his profession. And that's also something that he did and that his father may have done before him, right? The industry, the hospitality industry, the travel and tourism industry still needs to deal with that, because it's not just the numbers of how many people you can put in the jobs. It's figuring out how to define what that is.
That's exactly the topic that we had, because currently here in Namibia, unfortunately, the jobs in tourism are still seen as menial. And because we engage quite a lot with our tertiary institutions, and they say very often students would enroll in a course and say, I have to do hospitality because my marks weren't good enough for engineering or medicine or whatever else. So they do it as a default. And that Congress that we spoke about.
Not as a first choice.
Not a first choice at all. And also the perception of work in tourism is also not seen. People like being in the corporate world and, sitting in a fancy office. And sometimes tourism, because it is usually out of the fancy glitz and glam areas, in the nicer areas of Namibia, but also because of the working hours that we have, the 24/7 work that we deal with, it's very difficult for us to attract the people, not only with the right skills, but we always say, and Peter's very strong on that, to say we need to attract people with passion. And once you've got that, I think acquiring skills is secondary. But the people that are committed to actually driving and servicing with a smile and servicing with passion is what we are after. And we've got the right caliber people here. And I heard that Ron was also saying when he came into Namibia, even the immigration officials were friendly. And that's what I know many people here in the room here, but that's what we've been working about for many, many years.
Funny you should mention that.
Please do. Tell us your story.
I travel 450,000 miles a year. I have more than my fair share of interchange with immigration officials. And it's a government problem, because the Minister of Transport doesn't talk to the Minister of Tourism. The Minister of Tourism doesn't talk to the Minister of Labor. And next thing you know, and I'm not pointing any fingers at Namibia. I'm saying worldwide, you show up at an airport after a 7 or 8 hour flight, and there are 40 different passport inspection stations that are manned by 2 people, and there's a 4-hour line. And when you talk to the Minister of Tourism and you say, can't you fix this? The minister says, oh, that's not me. That's the Minister of Transport. I said, how about having coffee together someday? And, you know, we've seen this happen time and time again, where your first impressions coming into a country, speaking in terms of investment opportunities, I can't begin to tell you. Portugal, we all know about Portugal, the hot destination. Everybody wants to move there because of their visa program and their residency program. People would show up after a 7 or 8 hour flight and be in line for 4 hours. And they left. They didn't come back, as much as they wanted to love Portugal. So it's one of the things, you have to get everybody in the same room. First impressions, right? If you'd come here on your honeymoon and waited for 7 hours, you'd be divorced.
Especially because I made the trip here. I chose the destination. So I'm glad it all went well. We're happily
But you know
married.
exactly what I mean.
No, absolutely. And when whether as a tourist or even here, we come regularly, obviously for work, and you can see, coming back to this point of people, you can see the openness to want to be trained, the levels of eagerness from the staff, from everyone. You're welcome with a smile, and you cannot train that. The rest you can add on top. And to Gitta's point, we have to find a way to explain to people that this is an industry of growth. I mean, of course, there is minerals and mining. We all know historically that Namibia has been very strong in mining, in diamonds, uranium, and soon will be oil and green hydrogen. I'm not an expert in any of these things, but you can see that there's potential. But the reality is let's look at something a bit simpler. You know, I mean, and tourism is one of those things. And you look at the numbers: 7% of GDP on a quite a low base. The recovery is still yet to come, which means a lot more potential.
But you can track it.
You can track it.
Yeah.
Yes, and it means that there are more jobs to come. There are well-paying jobs, there are formal jobs, and you have lots of parts of the government which are coordinating, starting from the NIPB, about bringing increasing the share of tourism in the country.
And let's talk about the numbers now, which is going to bring me to you, Peter, in a second. And that is the one thing that was amazing to me about your presentation, Angula, was the average visitor stay, 22 days. How many countries can claim that? Very, very few, which puts you in an enviable position if you manage it correctly, which brings me to Peter.
Yeah, mine in terms of investment would be more conducive environments that needs to be created. But also, as much as government is creating conducive environment and policies for the investors to come in, I'm always a strong believer in a win-win situation in terms of investment, rather than just coming in, popping in, and leaving. There must be skills that are left behind. There must be mentorship programs that takes place. That is very key as well, because and you need to have passion for tourism to be able to do it right. If you only do it for profit, I think somewhere along the line, the ship might not go well. But that is very key. If it should be win-win situation in terms of the investment that comes in.
You know, one of the things that brings me to is that traditionally ministers of tourism sink or swim based on metrics that may no longer be applicable, right? Average visitor stay, average visitor spend, the numbers, our numbers are up. But is it quality or is it quantity? And then, of course, what is the impact of that on the communities that make up that country? So the bottom line is you are not only in an enviable position here in Namibia, you're also in a precarious one. Because how do you define your tourism? By quality, by quantity, and the very reason that people are coming in is to not be in a long line. The very reason that people are coming in is to have those moments of great, splendid isolation. And at what point do you reach a point of diminishing returns if you don't manage it properly?
I think in terms of the quality and quantity, it has to be looked at the investment process itself, because if you do not invest properly in people, I think you will have always a dead end in terms of that, because and if you do not have investment in terms of the community, from us that are coming from a community-based tourism, which is the key element that needs to invest, because
it keeps the communities together.
It keeps the communities together. It creates jobs. It also stops some of the communities to migrate to cities and centers to come and look for jobs, because that investment has been done on the community level as well.
Of
so
course,
that is very key.
That creates the absolute necessity to follow the money. You've got to follow the money. Is it going back to the community?
Yeah, it needs to have the money needs to go back to the communities as well, because that's why we always use the word people-to-people tourism. And I will steal quickly a word from the and me and Gitta was just quickly talking now. We steal a word from the logo of the Indoko Toyota that says, "Shape today, own tomorrow." If you do not shape today, you will not be able to own tomorrow in terms of the people on the ground.
But this goes back to you, Bonnie. Can you actually create a formula, a business model for investment that protects community-based tourism?
Peter, before I answer that question, I would want to come back as to when you were asking whether it's quantity or quality. If you look at where Namibia is operating, who are we targeting? We don't just go into any market. We identify the markets where we know there is disposable income. If you go into the Italians, we know what the Italians are looking for.
Oh, you got to tell everybody now. I've been trying to figure that out for 25 years.
Well, the Italians, they are looking for their good food and good restaurants. And they love their good food. But on a serious note, if we were to say we are going to be investing and marketing in Namibia as a destination in any of the countries, we are looking at who has the disposable income. Like now, the information which Nangula showed was North America. It's a good market, but our presence there is about 12%. So we need to go there because we know there are states who have the disposable income, but because of the long haul, our connectivity has been a problem. They want to travel, but connectivity is not there. But coming to what Peter was talking about, investment into the rural poor, we have a concept of conservancies in Namibia, about 82, 85 of them, 86 now. The government was deliberate and is still deliberate to make sure that we have got conservancies where people can have a concession and invest within that concession. By doing so, we are empowering our communities and we are bringing investment into them. So if you want to invest into lodging or hotels, obviously you are looking at what is it that your people whom you are targeting are looking for. The Americans, they are adventurous. So you would want to invest where you have got more game. They want to experience what a lion can do. I don't know whether, Peter, you want to do that. So you would go into this particular community and you put your investment there. But surely, because of our land tenure system in Namibia, in communal areas, you don't own the land. You can only lease that particular land. And it becomes much cheaper, actually, if you invest in rural poor. Because you don't own the land, so you are not going to spend so much in acquisition. You go there, you have got an agreement with the land board and the communal leadership, thereby exactly solving the problem of people migrating from rural communities. And we all know, and the Fair Trade Foundations, the understanding is people would want to know where is the food they are going to be eating coming from. So if you have got a good garden in a communal area which supplies fresh produce to your hotel, obviously you are saying for those who are good in agriculture, within the community they've got a community garden which supplies you, then you are home and dry. So exactly to what Peter is saying is the same understanding. It is a deliberate government initiative to make sure that the investors, through Memenangula as well, that they invest in communities.
So you're saying you can maybe solve your supply chain locally, and that works. But you also talked about connectivity. That's your supply chain externally. And let's talk about that, right? How do you invest in building new beds in building new rooms if there's no airlift? How do you do that? That's a metric you have to look at, or it's a very bad investment, or it doesn't pay off in time. And I mean, I know how I got here. I could have taken the Pony Express and gotten faster. Now, that's not a fault of Namibia. That's a fault of Africa. It's open skies problems. It's visa problems. That's got to be addressed, right? For the entire investment community to talk to individual governments to say, stop being territorially restrictive and open up the skies. Because if you don't do that, you're trapped. Agreed?
No, completely. And you see it, some countries like Kenya have started opening up visa-free travel across Africa first and to some select outside countries as well. But promoting that intra-regional tourism is critical. And yes, there is always an excitement to look at the American market and see how you can get more of the American market. But it is a long-haul destination. It is very, very far to travel. It is very different time zones. Today, I think the statistics show 30% of the tourists come from Germany. You have 2.7% from France and some of the neighboring countries. To us, at least as a business hotel, it's a very different than from a government perspective. We look at how we can grow that share across Europe rather. When you talk about nomad visa, who are you going to attract? You're going to attract people who prefer to work in the same time zone. You have a lot of those other benefits being here, and a lot of those places also have ease of visa entry into the country. So those things matter. Going back to the macro, they matter first and foremost. I mean, there's only so many beds you can fill when you have 500,000 visitors versus 2 million versus 10 million. That's just the nature of it, and you're going to fight for a reducing market share. So first, let's grow the pie. Let's go to pie where it's obvious, and let's do quote unquote some of the obvious things. And I think post-pandemic, you've seen a lot of countries fighting for the same things, the same share of leisure tourism from the same kind of highly developed countries. But the reality is, the first ones who are going to get it are the ones who are going to be able to open up their borders faster and attract the airlines, the tour operators, and get their brand out there first and foremost. Rwanda has been very good at it. We've seen it. You can see it in the numbers. It punches way above its weight, and there's a few countries like that as well across Africa. But I think we believe, at least as investors in this country, that Namibia is one of them. It's at the forefront. Are there other things it can do? Absolutely. It's there, and it's for the taking.
You know, you mentioned. Oh, Peter, do you want to say something?
Peter, I just wanted to add something in terms of the what the acting CEO has said in terms of the different markets as well. Because when I'm coming from the Indaba in South Africa a few weeks ago, and surprisingly enough, is that the U.S. market is much more interested also in cultural and community-based tourism, and little countries as far as Latvia has been so much interested. Austria has been so much interested in community-based tourism. But when they visit communities, their comfort you cannot compromise. So they would love to spend money, benefit local communities, but they would want to have a proper bed to sleep on. And I think that is where the issue of conservancies comes in, issues of investment in lodges from the region I'm coming from. I'm coming from the best region that sells and promotes the best meat ever. See how? Omaheke. And the only region that is called a country within a country, cattle country. So, and we have a diverse cultural concepts of tourism that comes in there, including more academics are coming there in terms of historical tourism. But what we are lacking is investment in proper lodges, because that is very key in that.
Well, one of the things that I think we can talk about here is what really happened during the pandemic, because there was a dramatic change in people's purchasing patterns, right? They came up close and personal with their own mortality during the pandemic. Either they got COVID and thankfully survived, or worse, friends and loved ones didn't. And it changed their approach to what they wanted to purchase. They said, you know what, I have no idea how long I'm going to be on the planet. Maybe I don't need a new car. or new clothes or new jewelry or new expensive electronic items. I want experience. And it speaks to what you were just talking about, right? And they just came out of the gate screaming, you may have heard the term pent-up demand or revenge travel. That wasn't it. They just repurposed their funds and they put it into travel and experiences. And the travel industry wasn't terribly prepared for it because, first of all, they didn't think it was going to be sustained. It has been. You've all seen it in your numbers, right? But then that goes back to what Ram was talking about, long haul, because they want to come. The question is how they're going to get here. And we now have aircraft that can go nonstop. They don't have to stop for refueling. Cape Verde is like a ghost town now because they don't have to stop there for refueling coming out of South Africa. The same thing happens in this part of the world. You have the equipment. Now you have to it's the chicken and the egg, isn't it? The airlines will say, okay, we'll fly there if you guarantee us so many seats, right? It's almost a game of extortion. I'll take that back. It is a game of extortion. And you know I'm right. But, we've seen that, by the way, in the Caribbean, where one airline is basically saying, if you want us to fly there, you have to pay us. I mean, and one island actually said yes and set a dangerous precedent, right? But here, it's a brave new world. The door is open. The equipment is there if Boeing ever makes their deliveries. Well, it's another issue. But that's another 2-hour special we'll discuss later. But the bottom line is the technology is there, the equipment will be there, and then the question is now you're in competition with 53 other countries to see who's going to get long haul first. You mentioned Rwanda. They got there first. They got there first, but how did they get there? They priced themselves very high. And that brings up the next question for you, Gitta. And that is, at what point do you price yourself out of a market or eliminate another market which doesn't help you?
Exactly to the point of quality versus quantity. Now, I know that when we talked to government about recognizing tourism as one of the economic pillars, and it was a battle to do so because we were always fighting against mining, fishing, and agriculture, which are the pillars of the Namibian economy. We said, tourism is so important because it takes jobs to the people, and unemployment or employment is a very important element. There was the statistic that for every 12 tourists coming to Namibia, one job would be created. So at some point, we were sort of chasing numbers in terms of quantities on tourism.
But by the way, that completely is in sync with the WTTC figures that 1 of 11 jobs is travel and tourism related.
Exactly, and WTTC actually initiated our first TSA, the Tourism Satellite Account, about 20 years ago, 2006 I think was the first one. But since COVID, we've also had this shift, this mind shift, where we say quantity is not what we're after, and it might sound a little bit conceited. For Namibia, what is very important, and we had this whole debate about conscious travel, and I know that the world is changing to conscious travel, also an environment in which we work in Namibia, and Peter made reference, and Bonnie as well, to this whole conservancy tourism where we engage the people and actually take the benefits to the people. And Namibia is, I think, one of the most advanced countries where it comes to organized community travel. We've got whole booklets, and that's why I brought it here, about conservancy travel where there are systems in place talking about project finance for permanence and wildlife credits. We are there. We have an open book in terms of how we engage with international communities that want to apply and want us help build a sustainable tourism industry in which we sort of take our conscious mind towards what is good for the people and the planet, and then develop and then look at numbers, and then, so we're very careful to call everybody to the party to say Namibia has got, and yes, we do need open skies, and we do need to sort of ease our whole, the aviation legislation, and our visa regime needs to be looked up and reviewed, but we are also very conscious about the impact that tourism has, and we want to do it sustainably and with sort of permanence as our key phrase.
You want to do it responsibly.
Exactly.
But again, we live in an era where the buzzword is over-tourism, right? I could probably name, and you could probably name, and most of you could probably name 20 destinations right now that are grappling with something they cannot handle. Greece, Barcelona, Venice, Amsterdam, Croatia. We're just getting started, and they haven't fixed the problem, right? Greece has 30,000 people a day trying to climb up the Acropolis in 100-degree weather. It's now a medical emergency, not just a numbers emergency. And you know what their solution was? We'll reduce it to 20,000 a day. That's not helping the problem. Venice put in a €5 fee, right, to stop people without hotel reservations from coming into St. Mark's Square. Guess what happened? Nobody stopped coming. They kept coming. So now they're increasing it to €10 a day, and they're still coming, right? In Japan, they put up a wall, they put up a big banner in a town where people used to take selfies, right, of Mount Fuji, and a week later, the banner had holes cut in it, and nothing was stopped. So you're not at that point. That's the good news. You can learn from everybody else's mistakes. So my question to all of you is, how do you apply those lessons, still grow your tourism, still grow your investment, but manage those numbers?
Peter, I just wanted to add something in regards to perhaps price versus quantity. From my experience is that when it is something that we have been taking for granted, because I've been in the tourism sector now for 2 decades almost, and basically specialize in community-based tourism. It was a difficult journey, but at least you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. But what we have realized is that you sometimes undermine yourself of selling your experience, a cultural experience. But when you have tourists that you take to community-based villages, authentic, no setups, those tourists are in fact encouraging you to put up your prices, because that's the authentic experience that they are getting. And you are selling or promoting that authentic experience almost to none to nothing, because you have these, sometimes we have this fear that you might not be able to get a market for that. But there is a market for that. As long as you can do it correctly, there is always a market for that. So you will be able sometimes to charge the same price, for example, just that you charge for 3 days to a tosha, for example. You can charge the 3-day tour to a community setup, because the clientele base that you are getting understand, and they are quite happy inside to put their money.
They do not complain.
Yes, they're quite happy to put their money back into the communities, as long as you do it just right.
I've always said that if you understand the process, then you value the product. Bonnie.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I think we cannot make comparisons between Namibia and Rwanda. The first thing being the distance between Rwanda and Europe, and the distance between Namibia and Europe. It's quite easy for anyone to fly. It's less than 2 hours flight into Rwanda. Whereas our offering in Namibia is quite unique in its own offerings as compared to even our neighbors. The Ovatwe or the Ovahimba, they are only in Namibia. If you go on to the other side, on the Angolan side, you will see the difference. So what I'm saying is, because of the population density in Namibia, I don't think in the next 20 years we will be talking about over-tourism in Namibia. And the fact that we have got more animals than people in Namibia is one of the things which no other country can actually offer, that this is an authentic experience. Because everyone, when you travel, you're looking for an experience. And that experience, the one you are going to encounter, which you have been encountering here, is not the staged one, like what Peter is saying. He's saying something which is very authentic, and something which, of course, will entice you to want to come back again.
At a certain price point, people want bragging rights. They want bragging rights to say, oh, you did that? Ah, but I hung out with the lions, and they didn't eat me, because you promised me they wouldn't eat me. But I mean, but then the question then becomes, do you make yourself in that process an elitist destination?
We in tourism, and Namibia has, because we're very often compared with South Africa, and some of our products are more expensive than South Africa, but there's reason for it as well, logistically. We've always tried to encourage that whole value for money thing. So you can name a price if you know that the value that you offer in terms of the offerings, not only the tangible ones, but especially the intangible ones, and the experience that you offer is value for money. And I do think that Namibia has quite a good, and it speaks to itself that we have a lot of repeater clients that come here once, twice, and come back for more. And that's why we need to sort of make sure that every time they come here, they've got different products, different regions that they go to. So to speak to the cultural diversity that we have beautiful programs, not only in Peter's Cattle County of the East, which is actually the least developed tourism region that we have, but speaking about the Northwest and Northeast, that takes us into the Kaza, the biggest transfrontier conservation area. And Namibia has got so many assets and so many attractions that would come, have people come back for more. And compared to the rest of our competitors, and I would call them competitors at some point and partners at others, compared to Botswana and Zimbabwe and Zambia, we're still seen as quite cheap. The air access is a huge problem for us in tourism, but sometimes I would almost say it's a blessing in disguise because it will
keep the numbers low.
It will never get us to mass tourism because people have difficulty in getting here. But we do need to look at, and I know that AirConnect Namibia initiative is there to actually look for the right kind of partners to also deviate from, or not deviate, but diversify. Currently, we've got that direct link into Central Europe, which is our strongest market. But we do need to have a route into the East and the West. So America and Asia do need to be connected in some form as well, and be it by code shares with other airlines. I mean, it's not as though we want to do it exclusively or sort of isolated from anybody else. There are connectivities that are currently being discussed, but there are ways of means. But the key thing is that we need to look at value for money, that what we offer is authentic, and Peter spoke to that as well, and that we really make sure that people come back for more.
And of course, when you go to one of your locations, Peter, the one thing that happens, which is inevitable, which is going to get people to come back, you're going to have a conversation, right? You're going to actually people to people, and that's the key. In the remaining time that we have before we open it up to questions, I want to go through our panel one more time and start with you, Ram. What's your biggest challenge?
We need more people visiting Namibia. No, I think the statistics are simple. Look, we mentioned all what's happening in Europe, in Japan, etc. But if you look at the occupancy rate in hotels in Namibia, I think last year was about 45-46%. You're comparing it to destinations in Europe or the US who are running at 80% occupancy. There is plenty to do with just what has already been built here. And I think the more we engage with the international community, wherever it is, and bring people here, not only as a leisure destination, but also as a business destination. And I'm speaking very selfishly because we have one of the largest conference centers in the SADC region. And you can differentiate people coming from Namibians doing business, SADC region doing business. SADC is a South African development community extending from here all the way to Tanzania. You can differentiate with European visitors. You can price them exactly like Rwanda has done to capture the value chain across different points. But the point is simple. The destination has to be marketed strongly abroad. We need to have more of these types of conferences here. We need to have more of just people visiting, knowing about it. It will snowball into a popular, more and more popular destination, which will bring more jobs and more to the economy. That's our biggest challenge today.
Peter?
Surely we need more marketing and more tourists in terms of community-based tourism that really touch down in remote areas. But also equally, we need more investment in areas of, like the eastern part, maybe if I'm speaking selfishly, because when you look at the age group that really do cultural tours, it's almost from 49, 50, 60, 70. So it's not the younger generation that does that could camp anywhere and so on. It's the older generation, if I might use that word, but that wants a proper facility to sleep after all the activities. So we need really that part to be looked at.
Gitta.
Our biggest challenge, and I was told that by an American a couple of years ago, is Namibians don't know how to tell their story. We've got amazing stories to tell, but to put Namibia into words that would actually sell is something that even Americans that we had here for the Adventure Summit a couple of years ago, was it 12 years ago? They said, now that we've come to Namibia, I'm actually at a loss of words as to how I will package this country to make it sell as a travel destination. So any help from you, Mr. Greenberg, would do wonders. Thanks.
Well, you already know what I'm planning to do.
Please.
I will do that.
Namibia
We'll fill you in on it later, but we have a plan.
Namibia is still known as the best kept secret of Africa, so maybe with that plan, that accolade might change.
Bonnie?
Mine, I think, is the air connectivity. That's one biggest problem. And one of the challenges is if you were to stay for long, you go up north, the Ohangwena or Musati, that region, part of Namibia, the northern part of Namibia, I think the investment has not been talking to the number of people who are already there. For instance, in the Ohangwena, which is the region with the highest number of people, we actually don't have even a conferencing facility. Neither do we have, I think we don't even have a bigger lodge in the Ohangwena, but yet that's where we have got the highest concentration of the population of Namibia. So,
And a concentration of trainable staff.
exactly.
That can, right.
So while I'm wrapping up, I think it will be fair enough to say, look, as much as we have these challenges, the over-tourism or mass tourism will never happen in Namibia, because every time you come into this country, you are going to find a new product somewhere else in one of the regions. So there is something for everyone every time you come back to Namibia. So our challenge remains air connectivity.
Let me throw it open to the audience. Anybody have any questions you'd like to ask the panel? Don't be shy. Yes?
Let's start with the gentleman here.
Thanks. Rom, investment. You've gone through an acquisition process from a regulatory perspective. Where are we at? Are we over-regulated? Are we under-regulated from your experience internationally?
As a private investor, I think there's no such thing as under regulation. But I think what we have gone through to make an investment here, and look, we do comprehensive due diligence with some of the best law firms, tax and structuring firms, and the reports came out pretty simple. To be very, very transparent. Of course, there's processes, there's competition commission, there's this, that, and the other. You have to go through, but there wasn't much uncertainty through the process. So I would say the regulatory regime and the regulatory environment seems fair. And I think that's why I leave it at. It seems fair for what you're doing. Of course, we are not in the mining and all of that, so I can't comment on some of the more challenging industries. But in terms of hospitality, getting the business licenses and so on, it is among, and I should add as context, we're invested across 8 countries in Africa. We've looked at investments in almost all 54 jurisdictions. This is probably on the easiest of the scale. So when we come here, we're fairly happy.
Other questions?
Yes.
Thank you, Peter. Mine is just 2 observations. One is a question. Does Namibia does the government run a hospitality training school? Secondly is from the presentation that was made by Ms. Nangula, if I was an investor, I would find myself investing the next day. It was really a very good presentation. But then, what we see on ground, and I think Peter has really tried to labor so much to talk about this. I'll give my experience as a tourist into Namibia, and I've been sharing this on a number of platforms wherever the people I meet. The first one was we could have had immigration to join this very important discussion, because at the moment you arrive at the airport, the first impression that personally I got with my team was whether we were ready for investment. What we see at the airport when you come into the country and what you test are completely different pictures. Today we are looking at readiness for investment. But then at the end of the day, we also need to set a platform. How is immigration prepared to receive investors. I can't come to the country, Namibia, and I spend 1 hour to maneuver on how to really get into the country, because it is really a kind of an ego show. Then when it comes to mice, we all know that tourism is public sector driven, and at the end of the day rather led, and it is private sector driven. We had a very big conference, or rather engagement here at Aviadef last week. But then how many of us were converted to be incentive travelers? I would tell you that many people left back wherever they went, wherever they traveled back to, without having a pitch. I think we need to be more intentional here when it comes to this. All of us here in this room must be converted to be incentive travelers. We have made our own personal initiatives to find out what we can do. And if you look around the different incentivized trips on different platforms, they will take you only within Windhoek, and that's it. But then whoever is really intentional on understanding and appreciating Namibia, I think there must be a game plan. That yes, if we are making ourselves ready for mice, we are here. But honestly, I was a bit not very happy when I saw we losing out a very big opportunity last week. I hope AHIF now presents us with a platform, because if we're talking about investment, let us be the first buyers of Namibia. Then we're able to communicate and talk about Namibia by large. I think these are just some of the key recommendations. But also really from hospitality perspective, again, as part of investment, I think let us be more intentional when it comes to customer service management across a 360 chain. I don't know how many times maybe Namibia Tourism Board interacts with the airport taxi drivers. The stories they talk about Namibia, they're not really encouraging investment. They're not encouraging investment. The first things from the entire drive we had from the airport to my hotel, this taxi person was, the kind of talk was really a bit toxic, which I found really, you don't know me, I don't know you, and really you're discrediting a country where you are earning and you should be promoting. So it has to be more intentional on having a 360-degree cross across the entire tourism value chain. Thank you so much.
Bonnie?
Thank you so much, my brother, and our sincere apologies for the unpleasant welcome you received at the airport. I don't think it is the intention of the whole of the government for any visitor coming to Namibia, whether you are coming for investment or as a tourist, to have had experience what you did. Our sincere apologies. What we have been doing with the Namibia Airports Company, so as the immigration officials, is we have a program called the Customer Care Training Skills. That program was initiated by His Excellency, the late President, may his soul rest in peace. It started somewhere around 2015 when our new offices where Namibia Tourism Board is housed. When the president came over to that building, when he was inaugurating it, he said, I'm so concerned as a head of state that Namibia has become hostile to where we are supposed to be hospitality. So from that time, we came up with a project where we say, look, this is the concern from number one, and we were aware as well that there is a problem, because not only are foreigners treated badly at the airport, it includes us. Weather is, you know, for those who have been here, our sun is brutal. You would be in that queue waiting until they are happy someone has made it happen. But we have engaged and we are training. 2 weeks ago, we were doing exactly the same training with the immigration officials, everyone at the airport, including the shuttle operators, some of those who brought you in. And we are already in an advanced stage where we want to make sure that we professionalize the services offered from airport into the city. I know some of you are travelers. If you go to the Middle East, the service you get from the airport to your hotel, you are driven in a Mercedes-Benz. So you say, wow, okay, so I'm important. So that is the
And then
the
you find out
atmosphere.
that everybody's driven.
Yes. So we want to create that atmosphere where whoever comes to Namibia, you feel you are welcome and you are important. As to the question whether we have got hospitality schools in Namibia, government hospitality schools, the two major universities in Namibia are government-owned, the University of Namibia and Namibia Science and Technology. They teach hospitality. They are government-owned, and the program they are advancing is government initiatives. We might not be at that high speed, as you heard from my colleague Gitta, said, ideally in Namibia, the ordinary Namibian who studies tourism does not have the higher marks. So tourism becomes a default course. So that passion is not there. But for those who are passionate about tourism, obviously they are making a difference. But going forward, I can assure you, everyone in the tourism sector, because it has been preached now and then, that whichever angle you want to take, tourism is among the top 3. So we are putting investments, and we are investing our time and energies into tourism to make sure that whenever you come into this country, you feel you are home, away from home.
No question, Peter.
Question over there, yes.
Maybe just to add to that, 1 or 2 points, because you referred to my presentation. So one is at the airport. I think it has been given. There's a lot. We believe that our best partner at NIPDB is the Ministry of Home Affairs, Immigration, Safety and Security. We have really worked a lot with them in making visa processes simpler. If you see, even getting members here, I know that we were having one challenge here, one challenge there. We spoke with Gitta, but we worked with them to make sure that that was smooth. And yes, the executive director of the Ministry of Home Affairs actually has got almost like a training that he does outside Omaruru, where he's training his staff members, and from time to time he invites some of us. So it's not perfect, we agree, but there's a lot of investment and training that is going there, and maybe one step at a time we'll get there. So that's one. On incentive, maybe the one thing that we did, we have got, I told you that our Ministry of Environment has embarked on the MICE and Namibia Convention Bureau kind of strategy. We have gotten a person who's starting at NIPDB 1 July who is going to drive the mice industry and who will then, of course, work towards getting us a strategy. Getting Namibians, we're actually also supporting the Ministry of ICT in driving brand Namibia. And we've got a person who's starting who has started, Catherine, that person has started in June as the brand manager. And what we will do then is get a number of Namibians together. We have got a committee that will put the brand Namibia together, and we will then work towards making sure that that brand goes through to the 360 degree. So we agree 100% with your observations, and there is a lot that has been put in Harambee Prosperity Plan 2 that we are implementing to make sure that we respond to those challenges. And on the training, we have got a training levy for where we have got vocational training. The NTA also has got vocational training. And if you've got a private institution, you can also register with the National Training Levy, and the government can subsidize the training for that. Thank you.
Before I wrap things up, I just want to go one thing that Gitta said. Oh, we had a question. I'm sorry. Oh, you interrupted the question. Aha!
Yeah, sorry. I think my question would go to either Han or NTB. You were speaking about sustainability. Of course, Namibia is gaining traction in terms of its energy projects, and the areas where these projects are also gaining quite an interest from tourists outside Namibia. What can Namibia do to make sure that it uplifts those areas, but also in a sustainable way, as you were speaking about sustainability? And Namibia is also big on community tourism. How do you plan on marketing this amidst the boom of oil and gas and the whole green hydrogen project? Namibia recently introduced a visa regime, a new visa regime. Do you see this impacting investment into tourism and the hospitality sector? And also, maybe this is for Menangola. I think in last year, July, I'm not sure of the time, Namibia introduced a program where they collaborated with Germany in terms of sending students to do hospitality courses within Germany, but this is on a working basis because Germany has the capacity to take in Namibians for employment, but Namibian youth are unemployed. I wanted to find out if you have numbers to how many of those students went to Germany for the hospitality sector, and after they go and work in Germany, what happens next? Do we just take them that side, they gain the skills and they remain in Germany, or what happens? Do they come back and plow the seeds back within the sector?
Mangula, can I start? And then you'll finish. Okay. So in terms of...
Don't worry, she'll interrupt you anytime she wants to.
In terms of working together with mining, it's actually been done, I remember in 2010, 2011, and Francois said that I've been sort of around for quite a while. We in tourism were very upset because all of a sudden, apart from the Russian uranium mine that we had, there were exploration rights given to more than 2 or 3 new explorers of our uranium industry, and that in the midst of our beautiful Namib desert, the oldest desert, and our moon landscape, which is one of the key tourism attractions in the Namibian Namib area. We in tourism managed to, we called people together and sat down and talked about it, because I think if we put heads together and minds together, then we really work on a win-win situation. So since then, we've had beautiful relationships with the mining industry. Nobody thought that was possible, especially given nuclear energy, which many of our source markets don't like. We actually have a wonderful relationship. We've done the same again with Hyphen and our Tsargat National Park, because remember, in 2019, we launched the latest or the newest, yet the youngest national park in Namibia down south. And just where we were busy sort of unlocking new horizons was the theme, because we unlocked the Sperrgebiet and we wanted to put tourism in there. Then came green hydrogen, and something that Namibia is now also very well known for. We've engaged with the mining companies and also with our leaders, and there is a way of working parallel. So mining tourism is not off the cards. We can actually tell our story, if people tell us how, about what Namibia has, both in terms of over the ground and under the ground, and make that part of our attraction. It worked with the uranium industry to a certain extent, so people actually do tours onto Rossing Mine now. We are sort of intending to do the same with the other sectors that we do have. And the story that we're telling is actually also marketing us in terms of how Namibia can do it together. So the challenges we turn into opportunities in terms of telling the story and making sure Namibians are known for the sustainable way that we run tourism, and also the sustainable energy that we provide. In terms of the training, yes, that was one of the key elements that we wanted to, and that was basically our focus, to make the tourism jobs more attractive or more sexy, like some people said, was that whole international connectivity, so that if you are a trained tourism staff, you can work in New York or Dubai or wherever else. And we had these beautiful case studies where people from another hotel group, not yours, were sent on their sister hotel to Dubai, and they came back and they were so amazed that, yes, it was a different world out there, but the skills that they acquired were the ones that they need to apply here. We've got programs. We've currently got people working in Berlin at a hotel and living. It's called Living Hotel Berlin, and 2 in München. The German hotels want to keep them there, but Namibians, they all come back. That's almost a given, even if it takes them 2 or 3 or 5 years. But that skills exchange for us is very important. And the nicest stories I hear is from those people, and it's not only in hotels, it's in Hansa Park, one of these entertainment parks. They say, wow, wherever Namibians are posted, that's where things are happening. Our Namibians out there overperform to the people of Poland or Spain or whatever. So it's, again, coming back to the people's energy that we have in tourism. That should be our key focus in terms of making our people realize the value of working in tourism, because it gets you international exposure, but also you get value for it. And maybe it takes us sending our youngsters outside, because here in Namibia we haven't sort of latched that value to tourism as much as people in Italy, like you said, Peter, have done. So some people are proud to work in tourism, not too much here in Namibia yet, but we're working towards that. And programs that in our PDB, together with the Goethe Institute, is also fostering, is what we are aiming at. And that's that tourism training roadmap that's building that interconnectivity of our efforts. Thanks.
And if I can, we're running out of time. I'm looking at you. But if I can just wrap this up with something that Gitta said earlier about Namibians feeling that you haven't been able to tell your story. And the thing is, in my experience here, you have a remarkable story to tell. I'll take that back. You have remarkable stories to tell, and I'm looking forward to sharing those stories with my audience. Would you please thank the panel, Ram, Peter, Gitta, and Bonnie?